So what we're here to talk about in the final session of PS Summit this year is DevOps Not ClickOps. Super.
You got it around the wrong way, buddy.
I know. I'm excited because I get to present with Ben.
Oh,
So those who don't know, Ben and I have known each other for too long.
much too long.
Yep. But he recently moved overseas and I don't get to see him all that often. So that's why I'm here this year.
We came up with an excuse. Let's be very clear. We came up with a title so that we could both be at the same conference so we could hang out together.
Exactly. And it's been a great week. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. But anyway, that's enough from us. Let's give it up for our sponsors. One of them's pretty good, apparently.
One of them, yeah.
Yeah. Or two or all of them.
All of them. Come on.
That's right.
There we go.
True. I was trying to give you company up. So, who am I? My name's Steven Hosking, as you can see. I work for Microsoft and I'm on the Windows Commercial CAT. So, what Windows Commercial CAT is, we go and work with customers to unstick them from not being able to upgrade their client devices and everything associated, while capturing feedback and working with product managers and developers internally to fix their products. Believe it or not, we're quite busy with the Windows OS in the commercial space. Anybody would have thought that? You can find me on any social medias as On-Prem Cloud Guy, and I have this little website called Intune.training. And you'll see that we'll have a smattering of cats. The man
Excellent.
beside me?
Yeah, so I think it's fairly clear now. My name is Ben. I work at Patch My PC, one of this conference's sponsors. We do a lot of automation around delivering third-party application updates into your environment because it's the worst thing in the world. So we try to make that just a little bit better. I am my role changes. Today I'm just a humble YAML farmer. You know, I do what I can. Did you ever get the stickers? They are in Glasgow right now.
So the joke is, this was supposed to be a sticker that you all got this week.
Yeah, I left it too late. They showed up as I was on the plane.
Just-in-time planning.
Socials, I'm only on Blue Sky, so find me there. I have a website. It's also the same thing. That verification system is the greatest thing in the world. I have one place to find me, and it's that. So cool. Yeah, cool. That's me.
Cool. Well,
what are we doing?
Jump into the agenda. So, just to set expectations for everybody in the room, this is not going to be that deep technical session that you've had all throughout the week. This is a hand-wavy session.
Boo.
Conceptual, but explaining why you're going to run into issues if you try and use the wrong tools to manage your platform. So part of the agenda is stepping at that problem statement. It's a pretty significant one. And then talking through the limitations of what we have on offerings today from your traditional infrastructure as code solutions, talking about the communities, how you're going to build your own solutions, and then the implementation options associated with that. We'll also break out some demos because we like to play around with code and portals and everything associated.
Demos are fun.
We also don't want you to fall asleep because we do recognize it's the last session of the week.
But also, you can have a nap. It's fine.
Yeah.
You got to be rested for tonight.
Yeah. And if you do, we'll point and make a point of it.
Hey, Steve, have you ever fallen asleep in one of my sessions?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Have I fallen asleep while Ben's been presenting and me sitting next to him? Yes.
Yep. Fantastic. Let's try not to do that today.
Exactly. Cool. So, the problem statement. How many people have heard this in their organization? You must use infrastructure as code to do any changes in your production environment. I've heard it at various organizations. We've gone and invested in Terraform, Ansible, Bicep, all of these great solutions, and it's no exception. You must do this, right? And then you go and try to do it for Intune and device management. And that's the area I live in, just for clarity. We're going to be talking around, well, how do we do that for device management? And it doesn't work that well. And it doesn't work the same. And this is why you still have a lot of ClickOps in that device management space, which we'll explain a little bit more in a minute because it's important to understand that.
It is. And I just want to point out, like, one of the primary reasons why we, call this DevOps Not ClickOps. So, one of the big strong conceits that we all should know by now, being at a PowerShell conference, is if you have to click on something, you can't really scale or automate that. And Intune being a fairly large platform, especially for, say, you work in an MSP scenario where you're looking after multiple tenants, having a concise way to sort of manage and set those rules across multiple tenants becomes an untenable, ignore the weird pun there, job, because like you have to click and do all the setups. There's no native way to export the configuration to like have a seamless configuration across multiple tenants. Headaches abound. It essentially becomes one poor person's job to just sit there just changing properties. And what's frustrating about this is that, on the other side of things, for some reason, EUC or end user compute has sort of been left behind on this journey towards everyone's a developer.
Yep.
Except the poor EUC guy who's just sitting there looking after the computers. Gets blamed for all the updates, crashing the machines, all that sort of fun stuff. He doesn't get to do any of the cool toy things.
Gets blamed for the developers creating applications that crash the machines.
Exactly, but that never happens.
No,
ever.
It's never developers.
So, I come from an EUC space. I've done ConfigMgr, admin stuff. I've done Intune stuff. I'm currently a software engineer in Patch My PC, not a YAML farmer. But, I see a real scenario where we can have the same benefits of what we're doing in the Intune space and in the administration space. It's literally all backed by Graph.
That's right.
So, like, if there's an API, we don't have to click things anymore. So I guess one of the biggest issues that we've got is, why hasn't this taken on in this space? It seems ripe for it.
Agreed. It's quite interesting, and we will definitely drill into some of the offerings that are out there today that are attempting to fill this void, but they're emerging is, I think, the easiest statement on that one.
Yeah.
So let's jump into, what are the limitations of the infrastructure as code offerings? The main one is there's no or limited templates for Intune and M365 in most of these solutions. It's a barrier. Most IT admins in that end-use compute space just don't have the time or effort to be able to do this. It's time-consuming. And they can just click a button and it's done. It's like, yeah, but now you've broken your environment. Well, yeah, now I'm busy again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, how do we help them? And this is where tools team help.
Exactly. But like, also, I was in a session earlier this week and they were talking about Azure verified modules for Terraform, which is a fantastic idea of this concept that, there's industry best practices for deploying these certain resources. Imagine if there was Azure verified modules for Intune.
It would be brilliant.
With configurable options for all of these things, but set up in a way that is, bomb-proof, so that we can start using Terraform. There's technically nothing stopping us from doing that. So yeah.
Yeah. It's
like, come on, let's write it.
Let's figure out how we do it as a team. The other thing to call out, and this is part of where we start running into these fun authentication dances, is while Graph and Intune is still using the same authentication processes, the same authentication protocols, they will typically have a different authentication token when you're doing automation. And apparently there's some issues between the AZ module and the Microsoft Graph module. You guys run into this at all? Where they don't like authenticating on the same device and same sessions?
Yeah, it's assembly load context issues with drivers in PowerShell is an ongoing problem. Has been solved, but is very difficult to be solved by the module maintainer. So it gets difficult if you're traversing across multiple things. Again, another one on that, because we're going to continue going to like Terraform and OpenTofu, because that's kind of, it's what I'm used to. So I'm just going to keep referring to that, but swap it out for whatever DSC solution that you want to talk about. But most of those things like Azure RM doesn't do graph things. Even the AZ API, like it's not focused on graph, it's focused on Azure.
That's right. And I think that comes to that third point, which is Azure uses ARM. You all know that, right? You've been using ARM, you've been hitting it, you've been doing some really cool automation based on that Azure platform. Graph is foreign to a lot of the people in this room, I'm assuming, other than Entra. Oh yeah, I can do Entra. Or I can read all my emails in PowerShell.
Yeah.
And
What's
then
an email?
And then go and create some cool automation in an Azure function that will just go and handle all of my emails for me. Mark them all red. I don't need to worry about it. But that's the principles that we're dealing with, is they are sitting on two different frameworks that are very similar.
Yep.
Very, very similar. But the most important one, and we will drill into this one time and time again in this session, is they don't work the same. They are intrinsically two different scenarios. So when we're looking in an Azure workload, we're sitting there and going, all right, we're spinning up these resources, and within a finite period of time, I can get a success this worked correctly. In Intune, success doesn't land once the configuration has been provisioned. Success lands once it's landed on the devices that you're targeting, which could take days, weeks. So,
especially if you're using Intune, right?
As this is recorded.
ConfigMgr, no. Yeah, no, it's fine. But no, like internet connectivity can cause, these devices to not get the policy on time. One of the big things with Intune is now that we're living in this remote working environment and you're not in control of the laptop being on, so you can make sure your policy gets deployed straight away. We need to steer away from this reliance on knowing that it's going to deploy in 0.05 seconds. Exactly. So I was joking, but I'm kind of like, it's the truth. You can't rely on the device to be on, so your point of success isn't an immediate thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that then means, well, all of my automation that I've built around success from that policy landing, being configured and returning a success result because I can run my smoke tests, that could be weeks and your change request can't stay open that long. Well, depends on how strict your change managers are. But that's the point, is it doesn't work the same. And we will talk through that more throughout the session. We all know this. This is why we want infrastructure as code. We have our stability. We have our compliance. And as you can see, the happy cat has its work-life balance. But then from the other side, we have the manager cat sitting here and going, well, we need to be able to understand our audit and risk mitigation scenarios. The main reason why you're wanting to manage your devices, and this is the other side of why device management's important. This is how we stay compliant with our regulatory requirements. This is how we don't get into trouble with our managers and our risk team. How many people love their risk team?
Oh, wow. There's so many hands up right now.
Wow. I just hear the rustle of hands going up there. But again, from an end-user compute point of view, there's an expectation, well, you need to be able to tell me within 5 minutes that every update has applied to that computer. And it's like, I can't do that. I'll give it to you at the end of the month and it'll be 95% and you'll be happy. But this is where it changes how you have to look at your delivery of content and how you change your view of what success is. So let's jump into our existing solutions. And I will be very honest, I've gone through and tested each one of these. They have been improved recently. So the Microsoft 365 DSC has improved significantly recently, but I've still not tested that. I have concerns about it, I think is the fair way of doing it.
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm rating these toolings, I look at portability of my configuration. So if I'm in a disaster scenario, if I need to replay this into another tenant, can I do this easily? Can I just grab that JSON file and replay it in Graph Explorer, which is the equivalent of, is there an ARM Explorer or?
I'm unsure.
Basically just importing the ARM resource JSON and splatting it in there. Graph Explorer is what we use to then hit the endpoint and say, this is what we're going to do. It's great. The Microsoft 365 DSC solution today will compile all of your configuration into MOF files. and then run it in there, and you need a worker to process it and do everything associated with it. So it's good.
It sounds like it's not running on DSEv3.
I don't believe it is. So there is some work being undertaken in that. What I will call out is, yes, it's saying it's Microsoft 365 DSE. This is something that is developed by Microsoft employees for the community as a community tool, and it doesn't have the full support of the Microsoft brand. Very important to call out. So it actually is pretty cool, but there are some limitations. And again, it's designed for configuring your email servers, your SharePoint sites, and Intune was the afterthought. Intune Backup and Restore. This is actually had some really significant changes made in the last 3 months. It has simplified its workflow. It's giving me more portability with my configuration, but it has some limitations that are interesting. So how many people here expect that I'm going to be running a non-production environment where I'm going to test everything, export my config, and publish it into my production with a pipeline?
I mean, that would be nice.
Yeah. Well, is that an expectation, or is that an unreasonable expectation from everybody in the room? Like, is that what you would be expecting for your end users, right? We have a repeatable process where we can replay it as needed. The issue with the Intune Backup and Restore is it's exporting the assignments and tying it to the GUID of the tenant that it's coming from. So I have policy XYZ, group XYZ, just all tied to the GUIDs because of how the API works, which is cool. I can replay it in the existing tenant, but what it means is I don't have portability of my configuration. I can't just go and replay it into another tenant because my old tenant's been compromised. I need to diversify, or I've got a divestiture of my platform.
Yeah.
So this one's, it's a little nuanced, but it is super important to understand that scenario. And then the last one, how many people love the idea of hearing about Intune CD? So continuous delivery. We're just going to keep smashing it into your tenant and we're going to be happy days, and it's running through a CI/CD pipeline.
I mean, it sounds glorious to me.
I agree. So I found this on the weekend. I started playing around with it, and they're like, you don't need to be a Python developer to understand how to implement this and install this. I'm not a Python developer. You need to be a Python developer to actually install and implement this.
Yeah.
They have made assumptions. They have made good headway in setting up the solution, but there are assumptions that have been made of, well, you should know what your environment is. How do you set an environment variable when you're running it locally? And it's like, do you know how to set the environment variable for application XYZ locally?
Probably. Off the top of my head, no, probably not. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not documented and it's not made easy. So it has potential, but again, it's something that has a barrier of entry for a lot of people, especially in this room, but in the end-user compute space. And this is what we see often happening is all of these solutions are built by people that don't do end-user compute, that don't do Intune management. And what that means is you don't understand the nuances associated with it,
Yeah.
which is important. So we have sad cat. As you can see, I've had a lot of fun with my PowerPoint presentation. I get to do this every now and again, and I get Copilot to draw me some fun pictures. Just to note, these are all drawn on Copilot, so I don't have to worry about copyright. Yay. And we have the pondering cat now. So the pondering cat is, all right, what are the requirements to build a framework like this? How do I build something that will allow me and the community to automate the Intune platform? I'm not sitting here and saying I'm going to build the whole thing. I don't have time nor the inclination. But what I'm sitting here and saying is I've spent the time to work with various customers to map out their scenarios of how they're going to do the infrastructure as code, breaking it into very small blocks. And it typically falls into 3 separate scenarios. The first one being publish the configuration. And this is where we'll dive into it a little bit more, but publishing the configuration version is important. Like, I cannot stress not just going and recreating the object in Intune, because you will lose a lot of really rich data. This is due to how Intune has been implemented, where if you make a change on a policy, it resets all the data that is being captured on that policy, and you no longer have the ability to see your past, your success, or any of the fails associated with deploying that policy out. Just gets removed. So this is where you need to do the versioning and then stepping it through your safe deployment rings. And this is where we tie it to our assigning of the configuration. So this is where it is different to what you have in Azure. So if I was to say assign the configuration in Azure, you'd be sitting there and going, oh, okay, cool. I need to delegate Ben access to this resource, right?
Yep.
That's typically how it's going to be. In the Intune world, we're assigning that to a group of devices. So that is where we're sitting there and saying, these laptops, these phones, these iPads, enter random devices here, users. These are what the configurations are being assigned to. And these need to be explicitly decoupled, because if you don't decouple them and you just go, well, yeah, I'm just going to deploy this configuration to all users and all devices, what happens?
You have a very bad time.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. The sea level gets grumpy.
Yeah, they do. Ben and I were there when Intune was launched, and this is what you had to do, or it was the recommended, oh yeah, just deploy it to all devices. It just is easier.
It's bomb-proof. It works perfectly.
Yeah.
Just deploy to everything.
Yeah, and then they turned around and went, oh, look, yeah, we've got an update. You need to change this setting on all the devices except these 3. Oh, well, I've deployed to all devices. How do I handle that?
Yep.
And this is where having that process extracted out of the tooling and ran via your change management platform is going to make your life heaps easier. Because then you, as the admin, don't need to be sitting there and stressing when that configuration's landing on the device or how it's going to go. Because it's the change manager's problem. And we all love moving everything off to the change manager, right? I know I do. And then the last one, reporting. I love reporting, don't you, Ben?
Reporting wakes me up in the morning.
Now, I'm not going to go through my standard conversation around reporting for Intune, but suffice to say there will be needs for you to capture that information and feed it into a data store that you can maintain yourself for various reasons, which we will get into in a later slide. So I know I've been talking a lot and Ben's been talking some.
Just a little bit.
Is there any questions before we start jumping into how you would build out this sort of solution?
Has anyone tried to build the first part of what we're talking about, which is like get the configuration and deploy it into your environment? Nice.
How successful were you? Yep.
Yeah. Because it gets tricky. Back in 2019, I did a session where I sort of wanted to do this in a programmatic way because the UI is nice. There's dark mode. That makes me happy. But, I saw the inherent flaw of the ClickOps thing. So I've said this repeatedly and I'll continue saying it, over and over and over again. Because what you're managing and looking after changes so drastically, so quickly now that we've got, the advent of modern cloud computing, like all these policies is just constantly changing. If you're not maintaining the module that you're using to do the CI/CD of your environment, it gets out of date really quickly. So I built a solution that was good enough to demo and good enough for me to be like, someone else please take this and look after. And it didn't. and now I guarantee you if I run it, it would fail. I also then built reporting solutions because in both of our previous lives, we were consultants, and I was doing the high-level documentation of what we were doing for customers' environments. So I was using the deployment, like my version of Terraform, to like ship out these changes that I knew what people wanted. And then I was using the reporting to just build out, here's the things we set. It was good. It worked. I lost the ability to have that final like award, the thing you were talking about like waiting until the deployment succeeded as my success model. But from my opinion, it was good enough to be able to have the report of what we'd done and then hope that they continue to look at the reporting in Intune, which we know needs work. So it's definitely been done.
Yes. So I think let's just jump in quickly here, and I've missed something here with the do's. I forgot to put a data point in there.
Okay.
What's the most important thing that we need to do if we're going to be using pipelines for our publishing?
Make them secure.
Remove admin access.
Yeah.
So my guess, sir, part of the reason why you ran into issues by trying to automate this is everybody else on your team went into the portal and just clicked around and changed settings on you. Correct? Yeah. This is where what needs to occur, and it's super important, is the permissions need to be removed for your admins to create, delete, and assign policies and configurations. And they're going to sit there and go, no, I can't do that. And it's like, no, you can do it. We're just putting it behind a PIM account. And you need to PIM up. And I need to approve that you're going to do it. Or he needs to approve that you're going to do it. Or your CISO, who's a scary, scary person, needs to approve that you're going in and changing our security framework.
Yep.
This is like, it's table stakes on how you get consistency and stability in your platform. The number of customers where they're like, oh, I don't want to do that, it's going to upset people. And it's like, more than the people you're going to upset when you accidentally deploy a configuration that bricks every computer.
Yeah, the stakes are significantly higher when you're talking, dealing with hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of devices. One small accidental oops change, and everyone's done it.
Yep.
But the goal of all IAC is that either it's lowered, it's never going to go away. Everyone makes mistakes. We're human, but the idea is that potentially you're even getting into a point where you're now pair programming configuration. So, if they want a PIM to make changes, you'd be like, okay, cool, we'll PIM, but you're going to sit down with me with our new magical configuration tool and you're going to show me what you're doing and I'm going to approve it and then we'll ship it. And then we can watch for the success of that. As opposed to just, yeah, cool, I approved your thing, go do whatever you need to do. Yeah. Good luck. That's the goal, right? Like pair programming in Intune. I just came up with it. It's cool.
Yeah, but it's important. So obviously the 3 do's that we have here are just as important, which is you need to use your pipelines. You need consistency of deployment. I am going to deploy this at a set schedule, set process once that code has been configured and published into my repo. I'm going to use source control. That's just assumed by the fact that we're using pipelines. The number of end-use compute admins that just don't want to use source control is amazing.
Yeah.
It's scary.
I've lost count of but I'm not a dev, so I don't need to use source control.
Yep.
In 2025, I've had people tell me that, and I very quickly turn around and say, no, you're saying that because you don't know how to do it. Let's sit down and I'm going to teach you.
Yep. And let's show you why the value is there, how we're going to make your life easier. Because this sort of stuff where you've got pipelines, you can sit there and go, well, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just going to go and deploy this configuration. I'm going to be at home in bed. And because I have safe deployment practices, does everybody know what I mean when I say safe deployment practices?
Wow. I don't think they do.
All right. So safe deployment practices was a phrase that we started talking about after the, we'll call it the June 2024 event that may have impacted some devices. You may have seen it in the news. Airlines couldn't fly.
The airline oopsie.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll say it was airlines, but it was a large impact. But part of what we talked about was that safe deployment practices where we're not going to go and deploy straight to production. We are going to do a ring-based deployment. We're starting with our 1%. They're moving to our 9%. And if you want larger incremental increases as you go along, do it. But do safe deployment practices. Don't just sit there and go, wow, it's just my end-use compute. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just as important as your servers, because you could be impacting how your managers, your CEOs, the people that approve your bonuses. More importantly, the people that approve your pay, how they can actually use their computers.
Wait, you get paid?
Sometimes.
Okay, cool.
Occasionally.
I gotta chase that up.
But the problem I got at the moment is, well, we won't go into that.
We won't.
But the important thing is the don'ts. And you'll note that the first one that I'm highlighting and calling out is republishing. So it is very easy just to go, wow, this Intune solution where I'm exporting the config and restoring it back over here, I just rerun that every time. Sounds great, right? But if I recreate that every time, I'm either going to replace the existing file, if my code goes, well, check, see if existing replace, or I'm going to keep creating the same policies every single time it runs. And what happens when you create a configuration in Intune every single time you run the process, Ben?
It gets really messy really quickly.
and can cause some issues with your tenant, I believe.
The tenant, global,
Yeah.
all Intune.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Ask about the shirt I have.
But the simple answer is, this is where you need to be focusing on your versioning. You need to see what you've already deployed and then say, well, I've got policy group XYZ version 1. I need to create version 2. And then you do your safe deployment practices to roll it across to the next rings. So it's fun. And then the next one is, you don't include your assignments when publishing it. And this one sounds common sense, but time and time again, we go into customer environments and they're like, oh yeah, I'm just pushing this out to the whole organization.
Yeah.
How big's your organization? Oh, it's small. It's like 40,000 seats. Do you think that's going to cause any issues?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you've just enabled Hello for Business for everybody, sir.
Yeah. It just comes down to, and we're just going to be saying the same things because we really want to try and create this mentality that it's literally a lock and load scenario, right? You have 2 steps. Configuration goes out. Wait for the green tick.
Yes.
Then do the assignments and watch the assignments for the success of being deployed out to the environment. So
Correct.
it's just a 2-step process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And ideally, you have the assignments, which is the next page. Ideally, you have your assignments associated to your change management system. So you go into your change management system and go, I've approved this to be deployed on this date at this time. And then this system goes, oh, I can assign this to this group. And then it has an agreed process on when it's going to step through all of your safe deployment rings with controls and gates associated with it. But you'll note that I call out targeting group and policy names. This is around portability. This is how I can move it from one tenant to another tenant without having to worry about being tied to a single tenant. I don't think I can say tenant again. I've said it too many times.
Tenant. I just want to put a point to this. What we're talking about here is it's best practices, but it's also a call to arms for anyone in this room who wants to try and help build this platform. It is something that if I ever get spare time, I'm going to try and stand up. But what we're saying here is this is what our goal, it's almost a spec sheet for what we want this to do. So when we target assignments, we will not be looking for the ID of the object. We're just going to be looking for the name. as Steve said, that means I can now do this across many tenants because I'm not worried about the unique thing. I'm just worried about the name. So you can reuse the name in any tenant and the unique ID will just change. So you're almost doing like fuzzy string searches for the objects because we don't care about the uniqueness of it. We're just looking for a specific target. So that's how you sort of get around that like multi-tenant process so that other people can use the tool that you're building.
Yep. Ring-based deployments. I think we've talked that one to death.
Yes.
And then obviously, as I keep reiterating, link it to your change management system. Don't do this. Don't assign to all rings at the same time. You will hurt yourself. You will hurt your organization. So, reporting. How many people love reporting? I know I do. I really actually get very, very deep into the reporting and love the data. What you will need to do to be successful in this scenario is you need to have a mechanism or process to capture your data outside of the platform.
Yep.
And we're not saying that in a negative way. This is more so you have a historical trend of, well, why did this and how did this do it in a set period of time? I note that we say that we need to connect it to our ticketing system. And the reason for that is we can then start sitting there and going, well, you know what? I deployed this configuration to this group of people and they've just raised support tickets. Maybe I need to roll back that change.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to do something associated with that because most organizations, device management is very large and complicated and convoluted. So you don't necessarily know what the other team members are doing. So this is the way to have visibility, but also centralize it with your problem managers and your change managers. But most importantly, just know what success looks like. The number of organizations we walk into and they're like, we want 100% deployment of application X to all computers. It must be 100%.
Yeah, just do it, Steve.
Yeah. How many people have that expectation from their leadership? How many times have you successfully hit 100% for a deployment? Yeah. Just for the video, we had 4 people put their hand up and they all have not had success on that deployment.
It's unattainable. Yeah, 100% is unattainable.
So the main reason why deployment is not going to be 100% in any end-use compute platform is because people own and run those devices. So all it takes is Ben to break his leg and be off work for 6 weeks, and that computer's going to drag down your statistics.
Yep.
It takes somebody going off on annual leave for 2 months.
Long service leave.
Well, they don't have it over here. So in Australia, we have long service leave where we get 3 months off every 10 years. It's brilliant. But this is where...
It's not brilliant for compliance.
No, and it's not brilliant for compliance.
Yep.
Somebody's gone off on maternity leave. Somebody's taken a 1-year sabbatical. How do we track those computers? Somebody's been sick for 2 weeks. You're never going to get 100%. When we're talking for patch management, this is the space that I talk about sometimes. But from an auto patch point of view, we're aiming for 95%. And that's after we've taken out all the devices that haven't spoken to us in 30 days or more and all of the exceptions. But this is where building what success looks like and having that direct conversation with your leadership to say, look, I'm with you. I want to get 100%. But let's do the numbers. Let's break it down. It's super, super important to agree what that's about.
Yeah. And I just really quickly on that, I know we're probably getting close to time.
5 minutes.
You know, the idea of this like 100% goal, it's attainable over a long period of time. It's not a like 5 minutes and it's done. Perfect example. I was telling you the other night, I have a spare laptop in my house that I use if I ever need a Windows device when I go to conferences. That's the only time I turn it on, when I'm at a conference. I just got pinged. I needed to turn it on because we're trying to get a compliance thing. I'm like, really? It's one device.
Yep.
But like, that's the level of compliance that we needed to have for this thing that we're going after. So, okay, I was like, this is ridiculous. Turned it on. Within minutes, it had pulled down the policy and we were back to compliance. Now, that would have happened naturally over the course of me needing to go test something, because I also use it as a lab. But like, again, it goes down to that point that like, we can't control all the devices and when they're on. Gone are the days of doing
Desktop floor walks.
wake on LAN and things like that. Yeah, no, I've done the walks.
Oh yeah.
We don't like the walks.
No.
So, it's just getting to that point. Just like, look, this one might not be compliant yet, but if it never comes back on, then it's not counted towards your compliance. And when it does, in a period of time, it becomes compliant.
And this is where having robust conditional access rules and robust network access control rules mitigate that risk. Well, you don't get access to corporate data if your device is not compliant. Your device isn't compliant if it hasn't been on in a set period of time. We're belaboring the point, but It's still very important to call that out from we haven't hit it, but they can't do anything until they get that.
Yep.
So this is how you have that educated conversation. Importantly, don't ignore reporting. If you're not sitting there and promoting to your leadership your successes and what they are looking like, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yep.
And again, don't deprioritize it, because
Reporting is important.
it really is. So given that we have 3 minutes left,
Show one demo.
I think we get to blow over all of this. But I get to show you the cat. You want a demo?
Do a demo. Show me what you've been working on.
Oh, I don't know if I want to show you what I've been working on, because you're going to tell me it's wrong.
Yeah, probably, but that's fine.
This is our relationship. Ben likes to look at what I do and then tells me my syntax is wrong.
It's constructive criticism.
Destructive criticism. While we're doing this.
Yep. Get that domain.
We were doing so well.
We're still doing great.
True. So,
Focus.
are there any questions from the room while we're doing this? Go, sir.
So this is not actually a question, but let me just say, after a week of listening to, many Azure pros and stuff like this session was the single most cathartic and validating session. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Look, it does come down to this thing where it's something that Steve and I have been trying to build, or at least, sort of change the direction of EUC for such a long time that it's wild that like it hasn't caught on. Like, there are people out there that really love this idea, and they build it. But the problem is it's an all-consuming task. You've got to keep up with Graph API.
Oh, yes.
Like, every single time there's a change, your thing needs to be updated. So productize it. I keep getting in trouble whenever I come up with amazing ideas. People run up and say, why didn't you just build it yourself? And I'm saying, no. I want the community to understand this methodology so that we can, we can be better together. That's the goal.
And my device decided to be awesome and not duplicate, but extend.
Nice.
So you didn't actually see my other screen when I brought it up.
How are we going?
Oh, we're at time.
Oh, we're at time?
Yeah, we're at time. I just want to show off something that I have been working on that I think is cool.
Zoom in a bit.
What is it? Control plus.
Yeah.
So how many people have to be compliant with CIS? How much fun have you had getting the CIS framework into Intune? How many people know that you can just go to the CIS page and download them?
The
in a zip
policies.
file? Yep. So what you do here, hang on, where is it? So what I'm doing here, let me stop that. And I'm going to grab my, whoa.
I haven't seen this, by the way. That's why I'm watching the screen.
So what I've got here is I'm going and looking in my edge profiles and seeing which profile do I want to load it in. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of edge profiles. And this is where we can then just load up our website for CIS over here. I go and log in and I'll go, oh, cool, here's your downloads. And what we have in here is we have Intune for Windows. And we can go here and we can just click on that link and we're just going to download it eventually. It'll catch up. There we go. We've downloaded it. And then we go back over here. We've loaded that up. Cool. And then the next step that we're going to do, if I can find my cursor, which is there, and we'll do the timer. Hit F8. So what we're doing here is we're going and looking in the Edge profile that we just downloaded. So looking in your downloads and your Edge profile to see what files you just downloaded from CIS, loading it into memory, and then we're going over here and we're going to extract it out. So if we then go into our folders on the left-hand side, we should have a frameworks folder, and there's all the CIS configurations. All just imported in from Intune, and you can just go and load them into Intune. You can do that via a script, or you can do it one by one if you want to test it and validate it as it goes in. But how quick is that to just get going?
Yeah, that's great.
No claps, no nothing. There we go. Cool. Well, given that it is 3:30 and it is time to wrap up the event, I think that's the session, Ben.
Shall we end? All right. Yeah. Let me get back up. Thanks again for everyone watching this. I know it's been a long week and talking in death by slides is a lot, but hopefully, the idea here is that this is a thing that we can build. We can build it. We're going to need to do it as a community. But I'm going to start building out the framework, and I will have it on my GitHub. It's going to be a thing. I don't know when I'm going to get started on this, but I'm going to make another crack at it. And then we need other people to help out to make this become an industry standard. That's the goal.
Exactly.
Okay.
Cool.
I think we're done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.